These are some of the secretly powerful Yu-Gi-Oh decks that the top players don't want you to know about. My guy, I've been talking to some of the best Yu-Gi-Oh players in the world, as well as playing myself, and these are some of the Yu-Gi-Oh decks that you can play if you don't want to play meta. Of course, Big Dog, I'll also be putting some personal deck lists on my Patreon as a special thank you for helping me become my editors. And if you guys know of some Yu-Gi-Oh strategies that we should be looking at, go ahead and let us know. Without further ado, let's jump on in. So the biggest thing I've noticed about Yu-Gi-Oh right now is players have actually been experimenting with decks that have benefited from the ban list. I just so happened to give you my early thoughts about that in last week's video. Go ahead and check that out. But a brief synopsis is that I've noticed a lot of players have been playing decks like Unchained, Wonderies, Branded, Purely, everything in between. There's also Solomon Gray Best deck, but I'm gonna calm down. Solomon Gray Best deck, let's go! I think one cool thing to do in this particular situation is look at some of the counters of what players are playing to some of the most popular strategies and cards, and one of those decks just so happens to be Sword Soul. And Sword Soul actually comes to mind for more than just that. There's actually a couple of things. The great thing about Sword Soul is that it is a synchro deck that is really easy to learn, but very hard to master, which can be very rewarding. The deck is also incredibly cheap right now, so it's a good strategy to step into if you're a beginner player or if you wanted to play something on a budget. Brokies, we up again, boys! I also love that Sword Soul is finally stepping into a good place again. It's actually really good against some of the most popular decks in the game, like Wonderies and Unchained. All right, Wonderies players, I hope you got your shit together because I'm finna go dunk hunt. Come on, guys, you know how much I love Wonderies. Look at this face. Yeah, it's lying. One of the biggest reasons why Sword Soul is just so effective in Yu-Gi-Oh right now is because of Tangi Spirit Vishuddha. Tangi Spirit Vishuddha is so good right now because it forces some of the top decks in the game to take care of this card or risk losing something really important in the future. And the best part about Tangi Spirit Vishuddha is that it can special summon itself to the side of the field at no cost to you, and if it ever does wind up in the graveyard by your opponent's card, anytime you summon a normal monster, it's a threat, so they have to respect those cards too. A lot of times you can force your opponent to do some things that they don't want to do, like how millennials in going to college was a thing that wasn't our choice, and that can be extremely important when it comes to playing against some of the best decks. That college line hitting you, huh? How much student loan debt you got, huh, my boy? Ah, yes, millennials with our dancing degrees. If only we didn't spend our money on avocado toast and invested into a house in 2008. When we were 12. Another card that is really good against some of the most popular decks is Boxia, Brightness of the Yang because it almost does what Vishuddha wants to do. It can remove cards on the field without destroying them, which is incredible against decks like Unchained, but even better, Boxia can even destroy some of your own cards to summon some of your lost worm monsters from your graveyard so you can continue on with plays. Also, I just want to say this, Boxia ain't once per turn. Crazy. Bro, Boxia gonna be boxing a lot of people in a box, my guy. Holy, this card got hands. Sword Soul is easily one of the best synchro decks of all time. Having ways to be able to remove your opponent's cards without destroying them is really important right now. Kind of like how Madolce has that exact same thing too. One of their most powerful cards, Madolce Queen Tiramisu, actually takes the entire thing to another level. Not only does the Food Queen not target, which is really good considering that there are so many cards that say, this card can't be targeted, it can't be destroyed. The person playing this eats glue and doesn't go outside. The Queen selects and returns cards after your opponent has already used cards in response to it, meaning that if you wanted to select a new card after your opponent has used some things, you can definitely do that. Tiramisu picks cards only after your opponent has used effects, meaning that if you wanted to select a new card because of what your opponent does, you very much can, and that's a luxury a lot of cards don't have. What's really good about Tiramisu is that it can get rid of some really big threats like Mirror Jade, which has a pesky effect of getting rid of your cards when it is removed from the field, and also Bestial monsters, which are really annoying when your opponent can keep summoning them back to the field. The Cake deck also had some secret support that just so happened to be impacted by the ban list. Herald of Orange Light coming off the ban list is huge for Madolce's, seeing that the strategy is comprised of a lot of fairy cards. My guy, this is the only cake that I say is not fair. All them other fine cakes is fair game if you know what I'm saying? Madolce can also recycle cards like the Herald and DD Crow to use multiple times in the exact same turn, and that's another thing that Madolce has that other decks just can't do. And to put the cherry on top, Madolce can actually reuse the Herald monsters as well as popular hand traps like DD Crow over again in the same turn. This can be fairly restrictive against some of the top Yu-Gi-Oh decks in the game, especially when just one of your hand interruptions become multiples just because of this cool trick that Madolce players can do. And I can't forget the biggest draw about Madolce. Madolce is actually incredible when it comes to using Earth cards. Really popular cards like Hatch-Tier Fenrir and Dino Wrestler Pinkertops can easily be recycled and summoned again with your Vernal Sylph cards, which work naturally with Madolce. I mean, to be honest, at this point in time, Dino Wrestler Pinkertops and Hatch-Tier Fenrir should just change their name to Madolce. Speaking of Earth cards, the Ishizu monsters are really good cards that Madolces can use. Both Keldo and Medora are not only amazing at ruining your opponent's graveyard, but also can be used to recycle your own. And if you love these cards, then you'll probably be in love with Tier Limit because it can use those and so much more. The other Ishizu cards like Kelbeck and Ejido are completely insane for Tier Limit because they not only allow you to send all of those nasty Tier Limit monsters to your graveyard to gain their effects, it also allows you to get a sneak peek at your opponent's deck, which can be really good for building your board. It also can become extremely problematic if your opponent is playing a deck that needs that one card inside of the deck to be able to complete the combo. It happens a ton where those Ishizu cards just send that one card that you really need and can cost you the game. Now, unlike the last two strategies that I talked about, Tier Limit isn't a deck that removes cards off the field without destroying them, but it actually is a strategy that when you destroy them, you're gonna pay. Unchained actually has a nasty habit of being able to destroy your cards, and unfortunately, if they destroy any of the Tier Limits cards, you can use their effects to be able to get some crazy advantage, but also, since a lot of strategies are playing trap cards, Time Thief Redoor being able to get a trap card, oh my god, it's crazy. Fortunately enough, another powerful deck just so happened to have beaten Tier Limit on the way to a world championship. I think that Rika is actually a phenomenal Yu-Gi-Oh deck that got a little bit better because of the ban list. I'm gonna reference this time after time again. Cash-Tira Rise Heart was a toxic Yu-Gi-Oh card. It actually gatekept a lot of strategies from getting into the game or made strategies positions a little bit worse just because of its presence. With the banning of Cash-Tira Rise Heart and Cash-Tira itself being on life support, Rika actually did get incredibly stronger, even though it didn't have a terrible matchup. And the reason why is because a lot of those graveyard-reliant Yu-Gi-Oh decks are monster-dependent, something that Rika is incredibly good at. Rika Konkon not only allows you to get into important Rika cards, but it also contributes your opponent's monsters for the effects of your Rika cards, meaning that your opponent can't even respond to you getting rid of their important cards. And it's pretty much not done there. If you're looking for a good combo deck that doesn't go off script like Tier Limit would, Rika's probably your best bet. And lastly, a strategy that just doesn't get talked about a lot is actually Tier Limit's contemporary. I would easily say that Sprite is really good right now, and it almost doesn't matter what variant you're playing. The reason why this Xe Link sometimes fusion deck is extremely good is because it has so many different variants. But one of the biggest things that I want to talk about is some of those important spell cards that you can easily search. Sprite Double Cross allows you to be able to get rid of cards and not destroy them. See where we're going? And Sprite Smashers, I mean, Smashers. Or should I just say, smashing? As you can see, Sprite does have a couple of ways to be able to get rid of cards without destroying them, but it doesn't necessarily stop there. I think that the Melfi engine is incredible because it actually brings back something that was banned in Cash-Tira Rise Heart. Using your Melfi monsters to be able to make Herald of Arclight is crazy because anytime your opponent wants to send from hand or deck to the graveyard, they get banished instead, and that can be pretty problematic against some of those graveyard-reliant decks. But another great thing about Sprite is that you very much can play runic cards. It may not be suggested for your health concerns, but it's very much doable. I swear to God, if I see one more runic player. Runic players are glue eaters, and we all know this by now. But I'd be more than willing to turn a blind eye if you're using these runic cards to be able to beat another type of toxic player. These cards are really good at stopping some of the top decks because your mode of winning can change from reducing their life points to 0 to, I not just deck you out. I personally don't think you should ever doubt the versatility of a strategy that can give you multiple ways to be able to win the game, and Sprite is a deck that is consistently always there, summoning tons of level 2 monsters and giving you multiple ways to win, as well as being a versatile Yu-Gi-Oh deck that can play with so many other strategies. It's really crazy talking about Sprite in this particular light because it was once one of the best decks in the entire game, but saying that it is a rogue deck is pretty much fitting, especially considering that players have dropped Sprite in favor of some other strategies right now. It's a deck that's secretly good that you should really consider if you want to be able to sneak some games, especially seeing that some of the best cards in the game, Sprite, can pretty much do pretty well against. And those pretty much are the secret Yu-Gi-Oh decks that the top players don't want you to know about right now. These guys can really put a thorn to some of the best decks side. Of course, big dog, I'll be making a tier list as well as having some of these strategies on there. I want you guys to let me know what are some other strategies you think should be coming on the next tier list, and while we're at it, what are some other tier lists you want to see? As always, big dog, I hope you're having a phenomenal day, and if you want to see more amazing CaliEffect content, be sure to check out these videos so I can catch you on the next one.